Hi, I'm Kristen Wheatley, and this is my Draw My Life. This year is a big year for me. I'm getting ready to graduate, go to college to become a nurse, and start my life as a working girl. But I wasn't always excited to go to college. Well, let's just start from the beginning. I was born September 18, 1996 in the small town of Frankfort, Kentucky. I was born into a family of devoted Roman Catholics, which I still practice today, and an older sister. She's 7 years old. In the first life, we didn't really get along all that well, mainly due to my biting her habits. Sorry, sis. But we got over that by the time I was 6 or 7, something like that. It's kind of funny because even though I'm the younger sibling, I'm now taller than her. I lived in a subdivision when I was younger. Well, except for that old lady who lived next door. She liked to complain about our dog barking because her stupid wiener dogs would come over and poop in our yard. Oh yeah. There was this one time my sis and I were home alone, and she came over to her yard and looked around to see if anyone was watching, and let her dogs poop in our yard. My sis was like, "Yo, did you just see that? Did you just see that?" So she turned the radio up real loud to let her know someone was home, and this old lady was like, "Uh-oh," and took off with her 2 stupid dogs. Anyways, when I was 4 going on 5, we moved to the other side of town, and it was culture shock. We moved from a tight-knit subdivision to a middle-of-nowhere farm. Plus, the house my parents bought on the farm needed renovation, so we lived in a trailer behind the 2-story crappy-looking house. I remember asking my mom if we were poor. It took 5 years before we actually moved into the house. The move from the subdivision to the farm wasn't that hard for me. I had only just begun school and wasn't really attached to anyone, but my sister had basically spent most of her life at that place, and changing schools wasn't a great thing for her either. But she got over it. When I turned 6, I went on some sort of horse kick and begged my dad for horses. The reason he bought an 80-acre farm was mainly for crops, but once he realized that wasn't working out, he was kind of like, why not? So when I was 7, we got 2 horses. It was a mommy and a little filly. The mommy was named Dawn, and when my dad asked what to name the filly, I said Pebbles, because she looks like shiny black pebbles. In actuality, though, I was really into Flintstones at the time, but didn't want him to know that. Sadly, Dawn died a couple years ago, and that was hard for all of us, but Pebbles is still around. Over the years, we got more horses, got more, sold more, got dogs, too, that never stayed around too long. Oh yeah, and cats. But they usually got attacked by the dogs, or, well, they ran away. We kept finding baby rabbits when my parents were clearing out a bunch of old trees and fence area, but they died too. We have a lot of graves. We also tried to nurse birds back to life, but the first one died because of an internal injury, and the second one we forgot to water it. Yeah, stupid. Back to the horses. Though we have had many come and go, the ones that stuck around with us still today are Pebbles, her younger brother that Dawn had later on, Derby, and Gus. Derby is kind of useless to us because he doesn't do anything, just eats and poops. But he's Dawn's son, so we can't get rid of him. Speaking of Dawn, she had another son a year after Derby, and my sister named him Chester. We had this cute neighbor boy who I think was 14 at the time, named Ben, and we had a lot of horses. So my dad was like, "Hey Ben, want a horse?" And he's like, "Heck yeah!" So Chester was then Ben's horse. I was mad at first, but he was literally right next door, and just on the other side of the fence, so it wasn't much different. Ben spent a lot of time with Chester. He was the one who broke him, and made him very gentle. My dad and I started going on trips, and we'd take our horses and go riding and camping, all in one for like a week. We started making more friends, and a bunch of us would get together every fall and spring break, and we started taking Ben and Chester. We still do that even today. Well, horses weren't the only animals that impacted our lives. I mentioned how we had dogs. Well, they weren't our dogs, except for the few cases where we did get one, but like I said, they usually didn't last long. But they were our neighbors.
At one point, there would be five dogs that would stop by our house and bark for their daily dog treat.
But one dog in particular stood out. His name was Jack, and he was a Jack Russell and Beagle mixed. He lived 2 houses down, but would make his way to our house every day. At first, my dad hated the dog. Though my dad kept telling me my ever-so-disappearing cats were just running away, in reality, Jack kept attacking them, and my dad was burying them in the backyard. Thanks, Dad. One day, Jack comes up to my dad, and my dad is mad. He just got done burying another cat, and he's like, "Dog, what do you want from me, bro?" And Jack jumps up in his lap and licks him. From then on, it was best friends forever. Jack was a good pal, though. He'd wait for me when I got off the bus, herd up the neighbors' cattle when they got loosed. He even brought us a frozen chicken once. True story. Anyhow, let's stop talking about animals for right now. When I was about 11, I started 6th grade, going in all innocent and happy. Man, was I in for a rude awakening. There were monsters and trolls everywhere who tried eating at my very flesh, and I would have to fight them off with laser beams like, "Shoo! Whoa! Wah! Hiya!" Okay, not really. But I did get bullied. You see, I was entering with a little weight issue. I had just got over being in a wheelchair for 3 months due to my broke foot and having surgery on it. The only good thing about that broken foot and wheelchair was that I got first in line at Disney World that year. It came with a price though. Never had I felt so stared and glared at. It was like people looked at me like I was worthless. There was one dude who walked right in front of me during a light show and blocked my view, and we were in the handicap section. When my dad asked him to move, he made a smart comment saying that I had another foot available. I can move if I want. I really thought there was going to be a country beatdown for my dad, but he held his temper and got Disney employees to escort the dude away. Anyways, back to 6th grade. I was bullied. Like a lot. And it wasn't from just one person. It was from several. And they were mainly girls. I got pushed, I got shoved, I got called everything in the book except for female. And it was all because of how I looked. I would look in the mirror and I didn't get it. I didn't see anything wrong with me. What was wrong with me? And it sucked, because I was put in the classes with all the ones who picked on me. And they always sat next to me. I would move and it was like they were a swarm of mosquitoes. Blah, 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 blah. They would be another one on the other side of the room ready to bite. Blah, blah, blah. I was very patient. I took a lot. But I started hitting the point where I couldn't take any more. I started lashing out on people who were nice to me, begging my mom to let me stay home, begging the teachers to let me switch classes. Nothing. I started thinking I was sick, but once my mom caught on to it, I would be forced to go. There was once that, well, we'll call her Jerkface. Jerkface, one of the main bullies, pulled all the girls together in the changing room during gym and asked for everyone to come forward. So me and my friend Aaron did. Jerkface then looked at us and said, "Everyone but you two." That was painful. And nobody else took up for us. That day I realized that the only friend I had in that class was Aaron. We shared a common enemy. Then one day in gym, we were playing badminton and Jerkface lashed out at Aaron and called her a bitch. It was one thing to make fun of me, but my friends, they reached a whole new level. So in the dressing room, she started running her mouth to anyone who would listen about how Aaron was a slob, no one liked her, she's a bitch, and all these girls are laughing. Aaron tries to defend herself by saying Jerkface is just a prep, and that makes her go off even more. I don't exactly remember what she said that made me snap, but I had it. I told Jerkface what? That she was the bitch, that she was the prep, that she was the bully, and when she tried getting in my face and yelling at me, okay, pause for 1 minute. For one, you never get in my face. If I don't like you, you never even get near me in the first place. And two, I don't like big mouth people. So I pushed her. I was standing there thinking, oh, it's on. I'm gonna take her out like Donkey Kong. But instead, everyone stared at me astonished, and she runs out crying to the gym teacher, leaving me there like, whoa. I ain't the bad guy. Several girls started telling me that she was so nice, and that I shouldn't have done that. And I'm like, the fuck? Did they see this girl and what she does to me? It was funny, because even though she ran out to the gym teacher, he knew that she and I had problems with each other and took my side. He let both of us go, but that wasn't the end of it. We had the next class together. Throughout the day, she kept getting her friends to surround me, yell at me, insult me, and some of them that did it were people that I thought were my friends, so it really hurt and got to me. I remember right after 3 girls got done surrounding me in a circle threatening to beat me up, I went over to a teacher seeking help, and he told me straight up, "You shouldn't have pushed her. I can't help you." And he walked away. It was a moment of, oh my god, that did not happen. You see, my dad is a teacher, and always told me that if you tell a teacher something like that, they'll always help you. But that was cold, bro. He got fired later on that year though, so vengeance was served at that part. Also, Jerkface and her little pals got in trouble that day too when I told the counselor of all people what happened, and she took action. I visited the counselor a lot that year. It's funny because Jerkface really hasn't changed. My last year of riding the bus, we were all high schoolers and she rode it too. I notified the bus driver that if I was ever seated near her, there would be a fight, so he made sure she never got near me. But Jerkface was on a house arrest and had to wear an ankle bracelet. It really shows that karma is a bitch. That day in my 6th grade year was a pivotal moment because I realized that most girls were just all smack and never going to do anything, and people stopped bullying me. I started opening my mouth more, and when people would shove me, I'd shove back, and they backed off. I've never been in a real fight, but I've been close several times. There's nothing I can't stand more than a bully. Now, don't take this as me saying violence is the answer and that all teachers are untrustworthy. There have been plenty of times just me telling someone what was happening got the bullies taken care of. These are just the most extreme cases. What I am saying though is that if someone hits you, touches you, and bulls down to it, never back down. Because when you do, it shows weakness, and they will forever see that.
Bullies weren't the only problems I had. I'm a hopeless romantic, so every boy that showed interest in me, I would automatically fall head over heels for him. Even still have in middle school, I had 2 boyfriends, but I don't really count them as relationships because it's middle school. Come on. My sophomore year in high school, I did get into another relationship with a guy we'll call Ditcher. You'll understand why later. He was a grade older than me. He was nice and all, but eventually it didn't work out. There have been several guys that I thought I was in love with, but some turned out to be jerks and some just didn't like me like that. It started getting to my self-esteem because everywhere I turned my friends had a boyfriend and I was just sitting there like, I love you, Chips. So it was prom day of my junior year and I had been asked by Ditcher a few months prior to go with him. I had shrugged and said, why not? My mom and I got the dress, makeup, jewelry, and were prepared. I started noticing the week before prom, Ditcher was acting strange and saying he didn't have money, but that he'll find some. I didn't really worry about it because he did that when we were dating, but then on the day of prom, I couldn't get a hold of him to confirm our plans. My parents didn't really like Ditcher, especially not my dad. So they finally got a hold of his mother, and it turned out that Ditcher never even told his family he was going. He never got a tux, never got shoes, never got flowers. He didn't have anything prepared. What a dick. He tried calling me and smoothing it over, but I hung up on him. Then his mom called me and tried convincing me to talk to him and go to prom with him still, but I said, nuh-uh. Apparently his mom got done the same way when she was in high school, so I felt bad for her. But I still wasn't going with him. I was an emotional train wreck that day. But I had sweet revenge later on that year when my dad saw him in a restaurant and told him to quit staring at him. Through middle school and my freshman year, I was also in the school band and played a clarinet, which I still blow on every now and then, but it's just not my thing anymore. Freshman year, the band went on a trip to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and it was a blast! It was the first taste of being away from home and just hanging with friends. But that Friday, April 1st, 2011, everyone was notified that 3 seniors from our school back home were killed in a wreck. All the upperclassmen were a wreck. Their names were Ellen, Nick, and Ben. Everyone was mourning that day for others' pain. It wasn't until much later in the day when I got a phone It wasn't until much later in the day when I got a phone call from my dad that the name Ben was actually my neighbor. That was the worst feeling I ever had. I went into denial. Him? But why? That question will never be answered. One of my best friends, my neighbor, he was like my brother. I never even said bye to him. It sucked. A lot. My dad felt guilty and like he could have done something to stop it, but we all knew there wasn't. He was 18. They all were. When I got back home, it was the most terrible week I ever had in my life. I kept looking out the window all day waiting for him to walk down our driveway and be like, "Hey guys, I'm here!" But it didn't happen. I saw his horses, his house, his barn, his land, his boots, but he wasn't there. I had a mental breakdown. I threw everything in my room, all the clothes I'd yet to unpack, pillows, trash. But then I came across my old diary and I started flipping around in it. And on one page was an old scribbled crush list from when I was 9. And at number 1 was him. I started crying and holding on to it. Me and 3 other girls that were close to him got to walk his 2 horses in front of the hearse. And the day of the funeral was quite beautiful actually, though it was filled with grief and despair. Not only was his funeral that day, but one of the other boys was too, and the others was the next day. It was hard for my dad too, because he hung out with Ben more than I did, and he also taught him and the 2 other boys that died in his class. The next year I wasn't quite right. I didn't want to do anything, I didn't care, I busted out into random tears at times, and I was an emotional train wreck. It wasn't until I slapped a kid on the bus because he was picking on a special needs girl that something came to me. I started seeing things as, what can I do to improve others' lives, rather than what can I do to make mine worse. It didn't matter if I didn't know the person. Anything I could do, I made a promise to myself to always help others. And that's something I still live by. I also promised myself to live life to the fullest. Don't down yourself with what you don't have, but be glad for what you do have. It was almost a year later when my community found out the reason of the crash was caused by alcohol. It made a lot of uproar and people started hating on the driver, whom also perished. I never did though. They were all drinking. That fact is now well known, but they all perished and we should respect each and every one of them. Since that fact came out, my school has had a lot more assemblies devoted to drinking and driving. Even Ben's mom came out and addressed us one year. They also had this really cool summer program called Breaks that taught kids with a permit and a bus how to properly get out of driving situations just using their brakes and wits. It was started by some NASCAR driver whose son also died in a crash, so it was really cool for Ben's family to go and talk to him about bringing it to Kentucky. As a result from my friend's death, I am a high advocate of no drinking and driving whatsoever. Just looking over my shoulder at that empty barn gets me enough reason to just say no. It was April 2nd, 2012 when we got the call that Jack the dog had finally passed away. We knew he had been diagnosed with cancer, and it was really sad because the day before we left for spring break that year, Jack came up to us and just laid next to us. He wouldn't eat his biscuit or anything. It was as if he knew he was saying his final goodbye. That was hard to take in too, especially since it had been exactly a year after Ben's death. During the time of my depression, I started watching a lot more YouTube. I found watching videos to make me laugh was a pain relief. I still think that laughter is a cure. That's when I discovered my love for Smosh. They were just so funny and reminded me of the things my sister and I do. I just liked them. I was trying to get discovered from anyone with my singing at the time, and seeing them be so courageous and brave and having no humility on their videos just boosted my esteem. I thought, if they can do it, I can too. I love to sing. I just had major stage fright. In 8th grade, I tried out for the talent show, but flubbed it up because I was so quiet, and I didn't make it. Even though I still like to sing, I don't really do it for fame anymore. I do it just because I like to, and that's why everyone should do it. If singing becomes like a job, it's not fun anymore, and you're not going to want to do it. At least I'm not anyways. Then when I saw Smosh and how they did a variety of things, I thought, oh my god, that's me. I don't only like to sing, I like to act. I like to voice act. I like to be silly and stupid. So that's when I started doing more of everything. I also love to play games. Even though all I have is a PS2 and the PS4 just came out, I'm probably still going to be stuck with that PS2 for another 4 years. It was 2012 when I came across a soon-to-be famous YouTube channel called PewDiePie, and I went nuts. When I was younger, I always got stuck just watching my sister playing the game, so I grew up to love Let's Play videos. He also gave me inspiration. Seeing how he has at the moment 20 plus million subscribers gives me hope that one day I could be there too. I'm determined to meet him and Smosh one day. It will happen. Nowadays, I just kind of relax and wait for the future. These events are all what led me to become what I am today. I want to help others, whether it be medicine or by laughter or by just letting others know that someone out there has gone through the same things they're dealing with today. It's something. Whether it be bullying, a death, being done wrong, these are all things that have made me become me. And I'm excited to see what more me has to bring in the future.